Well, now to an in-depth report on student mobility in the city of Detroit. It's a growing problem of students continuously changing schools and the detrimental effect it has on the kids, the classrooms, and the stability of schools itself. This is part of a joint reporting project with our partners at Bridge Magazine and Chalkbeat Detroit. And this is happening in the Detroit Public Schools Community District as well as charter schools. Kids are coming and going during the school year. Sometimes their records don't catch up with them. We spent some time at Bethune Fitzgerald K-8 school just to give you a sense of the problem. We're looking at one class of 8th graders attending the Bethune Fitzgerald K-8 school in Detroit's Fitzgerald West Side neighborhood. For many students here, it'll be one stop in many, because when it comes to schools, they've got their pick.
I went to Stewart Academy, then I went to Noble, McKenzie, then I came here to Bethune.
Oldman, then they went to Murphy, then he went to Coleman, then he went to Durfee.
I've been to Schultz, Bethune, and Murphy.
Chantel's been to 3 different schools. Oakman, Coleman A. Young, and this school. Half of them went to Parker Elementary, which closed down the following year.
For 1st through 3rd grade, I went to Williams Elementary. That isn't around because it was burnt down. 3 schools. 3.
Murphy, Bethune, Globe Preparatory Academy.
This one, then went back to my old school, then back to this one.
Have you seen a lot of kids come and go here? Or just?
A lot of kids come and go.
What do you mean, like 2 or 3?
No, like 20, 30, 40.
A recent Wayne State University study shows about 1 in 3 elementary students switch schools every year, many even in the middle of the year. In Detroit, students often don't attend their neighborhood schools. It's hard. There have been nearly 200 school closings in the recent past, adding the sweeping schools of choice policy in the past couple of decades, and that has led to more students on the move to other public, private, and charter schools around town and beyond the city's borders. With the constantly changing faces in classrooms, it's become a bigger challenge for everyone.
Educators everywhere know that transiency is a problem.
Every year it gets worse. From a teacher standpoint, it's hard to build a foundation.
In order for the cell to divide, some things need to take place. Tell me one thing that it does before it can do that.
I believe that it would affect them to a great degree. If you find yourself moving from one place to another, really, how can you learn a craft or even develop a certain amount of skills if you have no consistency?
You get new kids come in. How does that affect the class and how you guys are learning?
Oh my God, the class, they just like to pay attention to him or her, and they won't do their work.
It's something that kind of throws them off, because now the focus is not on their work, it's on them trying to make the connection.
You've been to 2 schools, you've been to this one twice.
Yeah.
How long did it take for you to get used to the work?
Oh, it took me, like the first day I got there, it took me like a month and a half to get it.
And you got acids and bases on each side.
Bethune Fitzgerald isn't the worst case regarding this churning of students. Chalkbeat Detroit and Bridge Magazine report it's fairly typical, and so are the reasons. Housing and poverty are just some of them.
So when you get to the core of the issue, it's about the economy. So if a parent can't afford the rent or their mortgage, then they're going to move. If a landlord comes in, it doesn't matter. When they evict and they have to go.
I was out of work for a while. I didn't really know how I was gonna get my kids back and forth to school.
It comes from a lot of different things. We're talking demographics now. You got where parents might have had to switch up because they couldn't afford the home. It came from jobs switching up, so parents had to move in and out accordingly to what was best for the family. And this program could be either for a household or either a community group or here back to school.
Monica Tarver leads the Bethune Fitzgerald Parent-Teacher Association. She set out a nice breakfast spread, hoping to attract more parents. 6 years ago, this room would be packed. They'd have fundraisers. But now she has only 15 parents who are reliable members of the PTA.
A lot of parents, they want to drop their kids off the road.
Right.
Instead of, you have a handful.
Do you think that's because they might not be here all that long?
I don't know. I never thought about it like that.
What is the buzzword in that set of directions?
You said you seen 20, 30, 40 kids coming and going. Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing. They might just learn something, but they didn't finish what the teacher was teaching, and they got kicked out, or their parents made them leave or something. So I think that's a bad thing. If they're not gonna know that they knew school.
The moves are not only disruptive, but research shows students who change schools even once have significantly lower test scores, have more behavioral problems, and are more likely to drop out of school.
Kids who come in your classroom who has not been part of the learning process, where you're developing minds. It's hard not only for testing or for knowledge purposes, it's hard even to develop that culture in your school.
There are 100,000 school-aged children in Detroit, according to Detroit Public Schools Community District Superintendent Nikolai Vitti. Half of them attend DPSCD schools, the other half go somewhere else. With the schools of choice model now part of Detroit's education culture, many here turn again to the remedy that seems to be the hardest to attain: better funding for the schools.
At our last staff meeting, we were looking at the number one in the nation, which is Massachusetts. And so I know that they allocate more money to their students. And so that school to prison pipeline, they're taking money away and they're investing in their students. We definitely need to do more of that, to have the resources, be it again a bigger attendance department, after school programs, whatever the families need, because that's where you have to start. You have to support the family, and then it gets to the student, and then they can flourish.
I see an end when we all come together and we get some money from somewhere, federally, from the local level. We need something to help implement these programs, so we won't have this problem again.
These stories lead to the bigger conversations of how you reduce the negative impact that changing schools has on students. Is it more funding for services? Is it a unified enrollment system? Well, we gathered with our reporting partners at Chalkbeat, Bridge, and WDET to have a community meeting about all of this. Stephen moderated it, and among the guests, the reporters on the story, as well as Detroit School Superintendent Nikolai Vitti.
Over the last several years, 10, 20, 30 years, right, there's been a declining population. At the same time, there's more and more charter schools being built during that time. So there's a surplus of seats for the number of kids, and there's this fierce competition to get them. In addition to parents, shopping around looking for what's best for their kids, there's this marketing campaign. They're constantly being told, come over here, it's better over here. So it creates this culture and this psychology of it's easier to exit.
The original argument was choice was going to make our schools better. It was going to make them more competitive. They were going to have to really up their game in order to compete for students. And what they've done is that they have upped their recruiting game to compete for students. They've had to set aside resources that used to go to instruction and put it in marketing. And now they're also spending money on the consequences of all of this movement. So choice doesn't equal quality.
Detroit's decline, Detroit hitting rock bottom in the nation on the nation's report card, happened at the same time as this uber mobile student. It's part and parcel why students are performing so badly.
If we want our parents moving less, there are school factors that can be addressed, but simple things like ensuring that families have a consistent, well-paid job with benefits leads them to live in one home in one area, some level of account for affordable housing, addressing heat, water bills are all factors that lead to parents to move from one side of town to the other.
We blew up the system. The whole system changed. And what I often compare it to is if tomorrow the IRS blew up everything. It was like the rules are not the same, the date's gonna be December 15th, not April 15th. People would be up in arms. But we have the same thing happening here in our educational system. We blew up the system and then provided no support. A lot of flashy brochures, a lot of changes and a lot of things happening over the years, but we lost also the connection to our cultural bearers in the neighborhoods who had that real information about schools.
It was very intentional that we now have 50,000 students in charter schools and 50,000 students in the district. Don't believe that just happened. And 10 years ago, it was very strategic, it was policy driven, it was political, that 50,000 students at this time would be in charter schools.
I don't think that authorizers, when they were picking up applications even 2 years ago, were considering, what is DPSCD doing in Detroit? Is there a new school coming up there? Was this going to hurt them or help them? What does that look like? And now we do.
Everyone has to embrace a new accountability system. So you see apples to apples, so you empower parents to make decisions on actual data. I think those are some small things that can happen to improve, to reduce the transiency that we're seeing among schools. But do your homework. This did not happen by chance.
You know, you talk about the impact it has on the kids who are moving themselves, but it also has an impact on the kids who are in the classroom, even if they haven't moved and they have kids who are coming in and out. It's disruptive as well. And Nolan, when you saw that report, I mean, there are a lot of factors here.
Well, there are, and it is a transient community. We need the jobs and the housing to anchor people to one spot. You have a lot of people who change homes 2 and 3 times a year, and we lack a transportation system in Detroit that would allow them, particularly a school transportation system, that it would allow people as they move to continue to send their children to the same school. There are a lot of factors that go into this. Poverty, I think, being number one.
Yeah. And you moderated that conversation, Stephen, and talked about some of the possible solutions when you're looking at a centralized enrollment system or making sure the records do follow kids from school to school.
Right. Well, we've also got to deal with this culture we've created over the last 20 years that tells parents a good parent is shopping for their kid's school every year. I mean, we've invested a lot in that with the expansion to charter schools and the idea of choice as a goal rather than a means to better education. If we can sort of convince people again that, you know, investing in a school and staying in it is, and trying to make it better is a better course.
Can choice ever be a good thing, though? I
Choice
mean,
can be a good thing.
Yes.
There's no question that choice has got to be part of it, but you need quality to match that choice, and we do not have that in the city. We have a lot of choices, and we have a lot of poor choices, and that leads to this sort of hopscotching around trying to look for something better. We did it backwards. We got to turn that on its head.
And we've talked a lot to parents and to kids in that story. And to me, though, I also think, and we talked to teachers, but that must be so difficult for the teachers to be able to try to keep up with this.
And it's easy to scapegoat.
Do their jobs.
It's easy to scapegoat choice in charter schools again. But if you listen to those kids, you listen to the parents, they were moving from one public school to the next public school to the next. Very few of them mentioned charter schools in their litany of schools they'd been to. Well, I agree with Steve. We need better quality choices. There's too much capacity in Detroit. We have probably 40 to 50% more seats in the school districts, public and charter, than we need. We do need a unified enrollment system to bring that down and make sure we spread schools throughout the community. I think there's a lot of things we could do to mitigate, but the key is keeping families in one place.
Well, this is something that we're going to be talking about over the next year or so. It's a very important issue.
Poverty only accounts for 40% of that movement. The rest of it is other choices.
You haven't mentioned foster kids who get shunted around.
And there are a lot of factors here. And, you know, for all of that reporting, and we've got a lot of in-depth reporting on that, on mobility from Chalk Beaten Bridge, the series called Moving Costs. So just go to our website and we'll have it all there.